The desert wind was more than just dust that morning. It carried a heavy silence, a stillness that clamped down on your chest and made your heart stop for a moment. Calder Boon, a quiet man of the land in his late 30s, was riding his mule along a forgotten gulch skirting Apache territory. The trail was barely a whisper of a path, worn thin by years of neglect, wrapped in legends so brutal they were better left unspoken. If this story pulls at your heart and reminds you that even in the most unforgiving corners of the frontier, hope can rise from the ashes, then stay with me. Don't forget to subscribe to Wild Western Tales for more stories that grip the soul, where bullets might miss their mark, but the human spirit never does. Hit that bell so you never miss a heartbeat from the Wild West. Calder wasn't a man given to words or stories. He was carved from silence, shaped by routines as steady as the sunrise. Feed the cattle, patch the roof, forget the past. But that day, as the sun dragged crimson shadows across jagged cliffs, something froze him in his tracks. There, beneath an ancient cottonwood, hung a girl, her wrists bound high with rough twine, her toes barely skimming the cracked earth. Above her, a splintered wooden sign swung in the breeze, its blood-red letters slashed with fury. "White man, don't forgive." Calder's mule snorted softly, breaking the tense silence. Uneasy, he dismounted, rifle at his side but not yet drawn. The girl was young, no more than 17, her skin sun-darkened, her tangled hair matted with blood and dust. Her shallow breaths stirred her chest, trembling like a fragile flame about to die out. He looked again at that sign. It wasn't just a warning. It was a verdict. A sentence. "God help me," he whispered, voice barely more than a breath. Without hesitation, he drew his hunting knife, its edge dulled from years of work, and with a single, steady cut, he freed her. She collapsed into his arms like a rag soaked in heat and suffering. Her lips cracked open, her raw wrists trembling, yet her eyes fluttered open, dark, wild, burning with an unspoken fury he couldn't begin to understand. He didn't ask questions, not yet. He wrapped her in his coat, lifted her onto the mule, and started back towards his lonely cabin, under a sky that seemed to hold its breath. Boone Ranch was humble. A 3-room cabin with a crooked roof and a windmill that moaned like a widow mourning her lost love. Calder gently laid her on his bed, soaking a rag in water to clean her wounds, whispering soft words as he pressed it to her cracked lips. She flinched at his touch but didn't fight, didn't speak either. Days slipped by in silence. She never uttered a single word. Calder called her Birdie for the way she hung there, trapped and fragile, like a caged bird. She didn't nod, didn't object, and he took that as permission to care for her. At night, he kept a rifle close by, sleeping by the fire with ears tuned to every sound on the ridge. He knew someone had put her there, and that they weren't finished. Slowly, Birdie began to heal. Her lips stopped cracking, her eyes started to follow Calder's every move around the room. That night, the quiet was shattered by a voice that sent a chill down Calder's spine. Sharp, brittle, yet unwavering. He was by the window, sharpening his knife, when her words sliced through the stillness. Why? Why did he do it? His eyes flicked to her. She sat upright, a blanket clutched tight around her shoulders, her gaze fixed on some distant point. Why did he cut her down? He set the blade aside, voice steady but heavy. Because no one deserves to die slow and trembling, not even a stranger. She looked away, her jaw clenched tight, holding back something unspoken. Even an Apache? His voice was low, almost strained. especially in Apache. The following week dripped by in uneasy silence. Birdie began to walk, hesitant steps in the yard, never crossing the fence line, as if the land itself kept her tethered. Calder watched her trace the cracked edge of the old well with her finger, whispering words in a tongue he couldn't understand, an ancient language that seemed to hang in the air. Then, one night, the sky roared with lightning, splitting the heavens apart, rain pounding the roof like the thundering hooves of an angry herd. Calder found her curled beneath the table, eyes wide and wild with fear. He lowered himself beside her. "Storms pass," he told her softly. She looked at him, tears mixing with the rain that streaked her face. "Not all of them," she whispered in fragments, her voice trembling. Her name was Nayeli. Her family, a small band of peaceful Apaches, had refused to abandon their land when the white settlers moved in. Soldiers came, fires blazed, and chaos followed. She fled into the hills, but they caught her near Cottonwood Creek, accusing her of killing a scout. Not to hang her outright, no, they hung her as bait, a trap for others. Calder listened in silence, the weight of her story sinking deep. Then he rose, walking to the mantel, reaching behind a loose brick for a battered satchel. Inside, he pulled out an old, folded paper, a wanted poster, rough sketches of a girl with sharp cheekbones and wild eyes, the name, Nayeli. Reward, $100. She looked up, eyes searching his face. "You knew?" she asked, voice barely above a whisper. He nodded. The day he cut her down. Her face was dry, but her question cut deeper. Why didn't he turn her in? His eyes burned with quiet defiance. "Because I don't love what they call justice out here," he replied. She stared at him, and for the first time, a faint smile touched her lips. It was small, fragile, but it shifted something in the air, a flicker of peace in the chaos, but peace never stayed long in the Wild West. Dawn broke with menace on the horizon. 3 riders cresting the ridge, one dressed in blue, the other 2 in gray dusters, their faces carved from stone. Calder stepped outside, rifle ready. The leader, a wiry man with cold, calculating eyes, tipped his hat. "Morning. Name's Prescott. We're looking for someone." Calder's voice was steady, unflinching. "Not many someones around here." Prescott pulled a paper from his coat, revealing the same sketch, the same name. "Dangerous Apache girl. Escaped a week ago. Last seen near these parts." Calder looked at the image, then handed it back. "Ain't seen her." Prescott nodded slowly, eyes narrowing. The air hung heavy, as if the very desert itself was holding its breath. Calder's blood stained the torn fabric at his side, crimson dark and slow, while Lena crouched beside him with eyes wide and flickering with fear and fire. Above, 2 riders still circled the ridge, rifles raised but wary, their silhouettes etched against the dying light. The narrow canyon offered a fragile shield, a thin slit of hope in a landscape that seemed to press down with silent judgment. "Still with me?" Lena whispered, her voice trembling as she brushed the blood-soaked shirt. Calder gave the faintest nod, a weak smile flickering through the pain. "Ain't dead yet," he rasped, voice strained but stubborn. Wouldn't be the first time. Lena reached into the saddlebag, her hands trembling as she found a folded cloth and poured the last drops of water they had left onto it. Carefully, she pressed it to his wound, and he hissed but refused to pull away. "Stay awake," she commanded, her voice sharp with urgency. Calder chuckled faintly, a flicker of humor amid the agony. "You've gotten bossy. You married me," he rasped, then groaned. "Bad deal for you." She looked into his eyes, quiet but fierce. "No," she whispered. "Not bad at all." Just then, a loose rock tumbled from above, skittering down the rugged wall. A shadow shifted, and one of the riders leaned over for a shot. Lena didn't hesitate. She snatched Calder's rifle and fired in one swift motion. The echo of the shot shattered the canyon's silence, and the rider ducked, vanishing behind the ridge. For a moment, only the wind's whisper and the fading echo remained. Then, the distant pounding of hooves receded. They'd scared them off, for now. 2 days later, Lena's trembling hands worked carefully, stitching Calder's wound with a quiet resolve that hid her fear. Every stitch was a fragile thread, holding hope together in a landscape that seemed to mourn with them. The desert wind had vanished, leaving behind an oppressive stillness, a silence that felt like judgment, like the earth itself waiting to see if they'd survive. They found a hidden camp nestled deep within jagged stone arches, concealed behind thorny bushes, and blessed by a trickling spring that seemed to whisper secrets of the wild. She tended the fire, boiling water and grinding herbs with trembling hands, murmuring old prayers passed down from her grandmother's tongue. Words that Calder never dared to understand. He only listened, teeth clenched tight as fever waxed and waned like a restless storm in his veins. One night, beneath the orange glow of their flickering fire, she finally broke the silence with a question that hung heavy in the air. "Why didn't you turn me in?" Calder's gaze drifted into the dancing flames, shadows flickering across his face. "Because I've seen what justice looks like when it wears the face of the wrong man." His voice was low, gravelly with pain and memories he couldn't shake. He shifted, eyes glazed with a mixture of regret and suffering. "I used to wear a uniform once," he admitted softly. "The same blue as theirs. The day they stormed your village, I followed orders. I closed my mouth and told myself I didn't see what they did." Lena's breath hitched, her heart tightening. But he pressed on, voice thick with honesty. "I saw it all. Every brutal second. I pulled you down from that tree because I couldn't let it happen again." Silence stretched between them, long and heavy. Then Lena whispered, "You never told me. I was ashamed." Calder's voice was almost a whisper. "Still am." Without thinking, she reached across the flickering fire, grasping his hand, her fingers trembling. "You're not who you were," she said softly. He looked up, eyes dark with unspoken truths. "And neither am I." Weeks slipped by, and the horses they rode grew sluggish, their hooves dragging in the dust. Calder's wound had healed, but not without leaving scars. Limping when he dismounted, each step a reminder of what he'd lost and what he'd gained. Every night, Lena wrapped his side with careful hands and whispered softly to the desert stars, her voice becoming a melody he found himself falling in love with. Then, near the border, they stumbled upon a village, half Mexican, half Apache, a place that didn't exist on any map. The villagers eyed them warily, suspicion shadowing their faces, but no weapons were raised. An elder woman approached Lena with quiet dignity. "Tu padre era sabio," she said. "Your father was wise." Lena nodded, her voice soft but steady. "Ayana," she whispered, revealing her true name. The elder's face broke into a gentle smile. "Then come home, Ayana." So they stayed for days, working alongside the villagers. Ayana, no longer Lena, helping with horses, teaching young men how to saddle quietly, healing in the tent. She crushed leaves, mended broken bones, and spun stories that carried on the wind. But the world never forgot them. One night, smoke billowed on the horizon, darkening the sky with promise of trouble. A familiar badge gleamed in the torchlight. Prescott had returned. The final confrontation was imminent. Calder stood firm by the gate, rifle ready, eyes sharp as a hawk's. Ayanna, clutching a bow strung with sinew and steel, stood beside him. Prescott dismounted, sneering as he faced them. In the shadowed dust of the frontier, a single shot shattered the tense silence. A young rider, eyes shadowed by doubt, lowered his rifle in quiet disbelief. "She's just a girl," he muttered, voice trembling like a leaf in a storm. That simple phrase hung heavy in the air, but to the others, it was a silent echo of something darker. A sign, a warning, that this was no ordinary hunt. It was a reckoning that crossed lines of justice. Prescott spun around, his jaw clenched tight. "You questioning me now?" He spat, voice rough as a gravel road. "I'm questioning this whole damn hunt." The younger rider shot back, voice firm. Another rider nodded, eyes grim. "We didn't come all this way to gun down a healer with hands that mend, not break." Prescott's face twisted into a snarl, veins bulging at his temples. Without hesitation, he raised his rifle, aiming it at Ayanna. But Calder was faster than a rattlesnake striking. The crack of his shot echoed across the empty plains, and Prescott's body went limp, clutching his chest as crimson blossomed across his shirt like a deadly flower. The silence that followed was colder than a winter wind. As the riders froze, watching their leader tumble to the dirt, speechless. Calder lowered his weapon, the weight of what he'd done pressing down on him. He was never the law, just a shadow of hatred wrapped in a badge, a ghost haunted by the fire of his own rage. Weeks slipped by, and the desert settled into a quiet that seemed almost sacred. Calder, seeking a new beginning, built a humble home from stone and timber near the village, tucked away among whispering trees. Ayanna tended her herbs, carving symbols into the rough beams, her hands steady with purpose. Above the doorway, she painted the firebird crest, a blazing reminder of freedom and rebirth. One dawn, Calder stood at the river's edge, his face etched with lines, silver threads weaving through his beard. Yet, in his eyes, a fragile peace flickered, like a candle in the dark. Ayanna joined him, her hand resting gently on her belly, a silent promise of new life.